Hello there, Drew Hanish Whiskey Lore, and time for another whiskey tasting, Whiskey Wednesday, and time to dig into a whiskey that I have seen on the shelf a lot, and it's always on the bottom shelf, and I'm always kind of curious about it. I'm sure you have whiskeys like that. In fact, mention any below that you've seen over and over again, have not purchased, but have been like, I wonder what that stuff is like. Well, what I'm going to be doing a tasting of is John Barr. Now, this is a whiskey with a really interesting story. It is a Scotch blend. It's made by White & Mackay, but it wasn't originally made by White & Mackay. It was actually made by the DCL, the Distillers Company Limited, which was the whiskey brand that bought up all of the whiskeys after the Paterson crash in the late 1800s, and then pretty much became the giant, which later on turned into Guinness and then Diageo. So Guinness bought DCL, and then all of a sudden DCL, now Guinness gets bought out or is morphs into Diageo. Well, somewhere along the line, basically this got passed off. This is actually a mid to late 20th century brand. So not a lot of history behind this. In fact, the history goes back to 1977 when the European Economic Commission got upset at the Distillers Company Limited for having one price for wholesalers in the European Commission versus what they were charging for the whiskey at home. And one of the brands was the most popular whiskey in the UK at the time, which was Johnnie Walker Red. And so they decided, DCL, to draw a line in the sand and say, screw you, we are not going to sell our whiskey in the UK then. We'll just stop selling Johnnie Walker Red in the UK. And so that was their solution, and they replaced it with John Barr. So John Barr became the whiskey that you would find in replacement for Johnnie Walker Red. Well, the whiskey, I guess, disappeared after a while, after it ran out of its usefulness. But then, because White Mackay came in and bought the name, they decided to do something with it. And so Richard Paterson, love Richard Paterson, Shackleton, great whiskey. So, this is sitting around the same price point. I'm thinking, all right, maybe this is going to be really good. 40 ABV on that one. Let's do nosing and tasting on it, shall we? And an interesting thing about Johnnie Walker Red, most popular Scotch in the UK at the time, but I still consider that to be somewhat of a bottom shelf. It has a really nice start and middle to me, not a great ending, but again, something that I keep around, especially when I want a butterscotch note, because I think that kind of brings that. So this whiskey right on the nose, immediately, you think of Shackleton and you think of kind of that little muscly character that Richard Paterson brags about. Well, this isn't so muscly. It does have kind of a heavy character to it, but it's really hard to tell what is poking out of this glass. Little bits of grain note, a little bit of maybe a peaty smoke note, but very light. And maybe a little rubber tire on top of that. All mellow though, nothing offensive on the nose, really, even the rubber tire comment. Maybe a little bit of a grain note in there. For something that I think is supposed to have mostly Speyside scotches in it, I don't really get it. None of those notes come through. Cheers. Has a decent mouthfeel to it, and then it waters out really quickly, and it's very barley forward. And then it it just really, like Johnny Walker Red, and maybe this was their point, although his blend is different from their blend back then. Goes for a bit of a disappointing finish. There's a little taste of postage stamp on that. Look in the envelope. I mean, if that's what you're looking for, there's still a little bit of citrusy grain note in this, but I would have to think that as little flavor as there is in this, that this is a heavy grain whiskey with a little bit of single malt to punctuate and add some personality. And it maybe adds the personality on the palate when it first hits, but the beginning, the nose, not offensive, but just there. And then seems like it's going to impress you, and then it just waters out and goes to this finish that is air of postage stamp along with a little bit of barley and lemon in there. I don't know. I mean, not my thing. If you were going to use it in a cocktail, I'm sure it would be fine. If you're just looking for a cheap whiskey, honestly, if you want a little smoke, go get some White Horse. Man, that stuff is a value. And you get a jug of it cheaper than you can get a fifth of this. So I would take a look at that, honestly. And at being around the same price point as Shackleton, I would do Shackleton every day of the week over this. So I hope this is helpful to you. Have you had John Barr? And again, list any whiskeys down below that you've been looking at and you're not quite sure about. If I have it in the collection, I will taste it. I may keep an eye out for it. I don't want to buy a bunch of whiskeys, though, that I know are just going to collect dust in the cabinet. So, that's where the hard-earned dollars got to put it towards something worthwhile. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned a little something. If you did, please give me a like and leave your comments below. Subscribe if you'd like to watch more. Don't forget patreon.com/whiskeylore if you want extra stories and links to my book and audiobook and all that sort of stuff. And until next time, cheers and Slainte. It's one of those where I go, should I take that last drink? Ooh. Yeah, there's a little paint thinner on the end too. It didn't hit me the first time, but it's hit me this time.